Hey, chapter 14, One Fat Summer, page 150. Sorry for the movement. Dad was quiet at dinner Friday night. When he did talk, he was very polite, like a guest in the house. He complimented Mom on her roast beef, even though it wasn't as well done as he liked it, and on the vegetables, which were soggy from cooking too long. Mom smiled a lot and patted his shoulder. When Michelle left for her date, Dad wished her a nice time. He didn't seem to notice how tight her dress was. He asked me how things were going, but before I had a chance to answer, he started talking about the weather. He knew how hot and dry it was after last week's storm. I felt like a fish who got off the hook. I didn't want to tell him about Dr. Khan yet, and I didn't want to get into a pack of lies about working around Marino's beach. I couldn't tell if Dad just didn't care anymore, or if he had a lot of his own problems on his mind, or if he just didn't want to get involved right now. Pick one, two, or three, or all of the above. I started to clear the table, my night again, but he waved me off. We'll take care of it. He pulled out his wallet. Would you like to take the bus into town? See a movie? I'll pick you up afterward. Very strange behavior. He was usually such a cheapskate. He was trying to get rid of me. No thanks, I feel like reading in bed. Suit yourself. Mom nodded me out of the room. I couldn't leave fast enough for them. I slammed my door, then quietly opened it a crack. An old spy trick. I missed a lot of their conversation because they were running water in the kitchen sink, but I heard enough. I just don't think it's fair to the kids, he said. Michelle won't be around, and Bobby will be very busy in the 10th grade. But they need to know someone's there for them. Even after I start teaching regularly, I'll be home soon after Bobby. These things just don't work out, Lenore. They do if people want. The rest of what she said got lost in the clatter of dishes, and so did his answer. And you could go in with Fred. He's been after you for years. Miller isn't giving away anything. I'd have to take a 20% cut in pay and no security. But that's the point. It wouldn't matter. I'd be taking up the slack, and you'd be free to do what you've always wanted to do. Quit Allied. Take a gamble. At least what you've always said you really wanted. When I'm ready, after the kids are out of college. That's at least another 7 years. By then, you'll be superintendent of schools. Ha! I'll be able to retire. He laughed, but it was a nasty laugh that sounded as if it came out of his nose instead of his mouth. Marty, if my working is going to come between us, I'll stop studying right now. I'd much rather spend the summer in the garden or down at the beach. I'll just forget the whole thing. Sure, and I'll have to spend the rest of my life hearing how I kept you from working. I'll never say another word. Yeah, that'll be the day. He stomped out of the kitchen. From the sound of his footsteps, I figured he was going out on the porch. Mom finished the dishes, took out the garbage, slammed the kitchen cabinet shut. The kitchen lights clicked off. When I heard her footsteps coming toward my bedroom, I jumped into bed with my clothes on and pulled the top sheet up to my chin. She must have stood in the doorway a long time because it seemed like 10 minutes between the sounds of my door opening and closing. I got out of bed and undressed. So that's the big problem. Dad doesn't want Mom working. Michelle was right. But Dad never seemed to mind when Mom took courses or did volunteer charity work with poor kids. Sometime when we were younger, I got a little jealous when she talked about the kids she was helping out, teaching them to read or taking them on trips. But after a while, I started feeling really proud of her. I thought Dad did too. At least he said he did. When Mom was a volunteer teacher in Harlem, she would tell us stories at dinner about really tough kids who carried knives to school and got into serious trouble with the police, stealing cars and mugging old ladies. Good stories. I filed them away for when I'd be a writer. Once, we brought one of the kids up for a weekend. His name was Bill Witherspoon. Remember him from The Contender? broken nose, spoon. His name was Bill Witherspoon. He was a couple years older than me, and really nice. He wanted to be a boxer. He showed me how to throw a left jab and how to protect your kidneys in a clinch. We all went down to the lake one afternoon, and everybody stared at Bill and shook their heads and grumbled when he went into the water. While he was having a diving contest with Michelle, Mr. Marino came over to my parents. "Hey, Marty, you know better than this," he said. "Better than what, Vincent?" "Oh, I don't care for myself. I got friends in all walks of life, but this is a family beach." "So enjoy it." My father's voice got hard. "Marty, we own property here. You want to have something you can leave Bobby, right?" "Like how to be a bigot?" Mr. Marino pointed a finger. "I don't like your tone of voice." My father stood up. "Well, maybe you want to try and change it." My mother got right in between them. "That boy is a weekend guest, Vincent, and this isn't like you at all." Mr. Marino spread his hands. "Believe me, Lenore, I'm not prejudiced. I was thinking about my kids." He nodded toward Bill Witherspoon. "It's not all their fault, but colored people bring more colored people, and that's the end of the place." "Are you finished, Vincent?" asked my father. "Enough said. Lenore." Mr. Marino took one of my mother's hands in both of his, patted it. "No hard feelings. You understand?" "See you tomorrow, Vincent, on the beach," said my father. It rained the next day, so we ate out and went to the movies in Grantsville, which is about 20 miles from Rumson Lake and has some Negroes living in the town. We never talked about it again, but Mom didn't bring up any more charity kids after that. I hung around Saturday. Mom played records just to break up the silence, I think. She fooled around in the garden, but I could tell she didn't care if the flowers grew or not. Dad was in and out. He went to a golf driving range with one of the neighbors, then he went swimming. Michelle was down at the beach. It was like a morgue at dinner. The chicken was burnt, but my father didn't say one word. He didn't even shoot me a dirty look when I sucked on my drumstick. That's one of his pet peeves, noisy eating. I could have slurped soup that night or crunched an ice cube, and I don't think he would have opened his mouth. Michelle peeled sunburned skin off her arm right at the table. Normally, that would have driven him wild. Nothing. The only sound was Mom putting plates down. She managed to rattle the table every time. I think she did it purposely. Michelle asked me to do the dishes for her. She had a date. She said she'd pay me back during the week. I said okay. "We're going to the Millers, Michelle. They're expecting you too. You knew that." "I have something better to do." "I don't think that's right. Joni will be very disappointed." "I do not want to go. Period." "Marty?" My mother was appealing for a decision. Dad just shrugged and left the table. "Do what you want, Michelle," said my mother. We got to the Millers about 8:30. Mr. and Mrs. Miller were waiting at the door, grinning like monkeys. They just couldn't stand. They were so excited. Joni was standing in the middle of the living room, her back to us. "Da-dum!" said Mr. Miller, waving his arm with flourish. Joni turned around. At first I only saw her eyes. They were both black, like she had been in a fight. Two black eyes. "Gorgeous!" shrieked my mother, rushing over to hug Joni. "Congratulations," said my father. He shook Mr. Miller's hand. "A very nice job." "We got the best plastic surgeon in the city," said Mrs. Miller. My mother let Joni loose and stepped back. "Darling, you are beautiful." And then I saw it. Her nose was gone. "Well?" Joni was smiling at me. She looked horrible. Her face was puffy and bruised. Her new little nose was red and scaly. "Looks great." Mr. Miller was pouring drinks for my parents. Over his shoulder, he said, "There's Coke and ice cream in the fridge. Why don't you kids help yourself?" We went into the kitchen. Joni scooped out a huge chunk of ice cream for me and a much smaller one for herself. We sat down at the kitchen table. I felt like I was with a stranger. Did it hurt? I didn't feel anything during the operation. It hurt a little afterward, but not much. Now it feels funny sometimes, like my skin is really tight there, but that goes away. It's a nice nose. I sounded really dumb. We picked it out from photographs. The doctor just, chopped it off? With a chisel, like a sculptor. It's really very nice. I hated looking at it, but I couldn't take my eyes off it. We really should have waited until the swelling goes down, but that wouldn't be for another couple of weeks, and I just couldn't wait to see you. Was it a complete surprise? Did you suspect anything? No, I didn't. I can't believe it myself. When I see myself in a mirror, I can't believe it's really me. Did you plan it for a long time? It was really my mother's idea. For some reason, that made me feel a little better. I ate my first spoonful of ice cream. You can't have it done until your nose stops growing, but we've been talking about it for a couple of years. You never told me. Well, what was there to talk about? I mean, it's such a big thing, and we talk about everything else. I wanted it to be a surprise. Joni, why'd you do it? Surprise you? No, get a nose job. She looked at me as if I was crazy. Because it was so ugly. I hated it. Couldn't you tell? I hated to go to school. I hated to go out on the street. I hated the way people stared at me. I never stared at you. I know. That's why I wanted to surprise you. It looks real nice. What have you been doing? She asked. Not too much. I didn't feel like telling her about all the things that had happened. I felt like she was different and that she wouldn't understand. We're going back to the city for the week, but then I'll be back for good. We can start our project if you still want to. Okay. Joni, come in here for a minute. While she was gone, I gobbled down the ice cream. I just shoveled the spoonfuls as fast as I could. I knew exactly what was going to happen, and I didn't care. Oh, bam! The shot between the eyes, the dull ache boring through the skull. My old ice cream headache pal. Chapter